Hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We are here live at the Build studio in New York City. Our next guest is the most successful woman in the history of American open wheel racing, Indy racing. Also has written 2 books, has a vineyard, her own clothing line, and now a podcast called Pretty Intense. She's an absolute freaking icon. She's sitting right over there. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the great Danica Patrick. Come on. Loud as you can get. Danica, right here.
If this was recorded in post, you could just triple up the audience sound.
For VOD.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we'll get it in there.
Perfect.
People can't tell at home. They're just watching. But there's like
1,000 people here.
Exactly. 15,000 people in this room right now. Danica, congratulations. The podcast has been out for since the summer. Dropped,
yeah.
And
late summer.
it's doing very well. I'm a big fan of it. A lot of people are listening to this and loving it and loving the conversations you're having. I'm so excited to talk to you about it.
Thanks.
How are you?
I'm good.
All right?
I am on at the end of a week. This is literally the last thing I have to do this week. I got into New York City on Sunday night and started on Monday morning with Michael Strahan at GMA Third Hour, and then have been going since then. So I've recorded 8 podcasts this week, and I've done a ton of media to promote the podcast at the same time. So I was like, hey, this week let's go to New York, and I think I might not allow 5 days total next time. It's a lot.
So while doing all the press, you've been knocking out episodes, future episodes of the podcast.
Big ones too. Yesterday I talked to a scientist who's a professor at Harvard, and then after that I talked to an author who went to Yale. So yeah, I have a GED.
Yeah, exactly. Going into those when you talk to fellow athletes, or you talk to people in the entertainment industry, versus when you talk to somebody who's at Yale or who's this amazing scientist, like how does that impact your preparation? How much more homework or less? Like what happens going into that?
It's actually the same.
Yeah.
I'd say about 2 hours per guest to. I have a researcher that sends me research, and so I get. Actually, I got a new researcher, and I was getting like six or 7 pages, and I was like, I'm used to about 10 to 15. Yeah. So I get all that research. I go through this information and kind of highlight the things that I think are interesting that apply to the things that I like to talk about and I'm curious about, and then I start to formulate the flow of the conversation based on those high points that I circle along the way, and write little things in the column of like questions to ask. And there's usually about 4 or 5 points that's all you need to get through an hour. I mean, shoot. I mean, you could probably wing it, but 4 or 5 points of like interest are enough, and then just let it go. But the hard thing in an interview, and maybe you can help me out with this, is that when you're doing one, you have this idea of how you want the flow to go, and you have things that you want to get to that are important and that are interesting. Yeah. But you really have to pay attention. You have to listen to who's talking, because that's the only way you can really have a truly flowing conversation based on what they've just said. They'll almost give you the next question based on what they've just said. Yet you've got this agenda, so it's this balance of like really listening, but also keeping in mind the things that you want to talk about. So,
can I say something?
Got some advice?
I'll show you the cards after. The thing we're talking about right now, I didn't plan for at least another 7 or 8 minutes within our conversation. We would talk about your process and all that later. But you mentioned you had these individuals that you talked to, these scientists, these Yale professors, and I thought immediately, I wonder how you go into that and how that's different. And I was like, all right, let's go there now. Let's just talk about it, and let's see you did exactly the thing you just said.
So just wing it.
Yeah, just wing it.
All right.
I gotta tell you, listening to your podcast, you're very good at that. Here's something that I was curious about, though, too, because, and maybe this is a stretch, or I'm insane to draw this parallel, but, being the most successful female in the sport of American open car racing and all that, doing that for us, how long did you race officially? How many years?
27.
All right, 27 years you're doing that, right? That skill set that you've honed over nearly 3 decades of having to be present and be alert and adapt in the moment and be able to do that. How much has that informed your skills as a conversationalist?
That's kind of exactly what it is. I mean, it's about being really present, which is the listening part. It's much harder to plan in racing. That's kind of the beforehand of setup and what you anticipate the track is going to do in its transition arc from the beginning to the end of the race. But that presence, that very much listening and paying attention to exactly what's going on, which is sort of being in tune with the car, that's really similar. And I guess on the preparation side, the prep for the guest is kind of like the practice prep for the race. So there are definitely some similarities. However, I am far less dangerous in a dangerous situation, right?
are-
I think I'm less.
we
I
are
think I'm
pretty
in less
secure
danger
right
sitting
now.
right here
Yes.
than 200 miles an hour with all my best friends.
We just had the studio service. You're in a very safe seat, and like it's there's no danger.
Well, for anyone that goes to New York a lot, you know that you can't go anywhere without showing your ID and giving blood. So it's very
true. We do
secure
that at the front.
spaces.
We do that at every show, and the windows are double paned, so there's nobody's getting in.
No,
Or
this is
out. We
fake,
lock
in
the
fact.
doors from the outside.
This is actually fake traffic. This is just a prompter.
It's all a lie. No, that's fascinating. Did you realize that right away, or did it take time? Did you know that going in? Like, I think I'll be good at this because I was really good at this. So like,
Well, I like talking.
there you go. So you knew.
It's like when people ask me why I have a vineyard, I'm like, I like drinking. So particularly wine. So I realized that with my girlfriends too, is that we just I just love, like, somebody actually asked me what the most important quality is in a friend, and I said vulnerability.
Were you guys drinking when they asked that, by the way?
Absolutely.
All right, good. Go. I thought so. Keep going.
So vulnerability is the most important thing because, of course, if I'm going to share with you thoughts and feelings and situations I've had happen in my life, but you don't share with me, that means that I trust you, but you don't trust me, which means I shouldn't trust you. So vulnerability is a really important thing to be in a relationship with a friend that's reciprocal, in any relationship, really. So we dive in and talk about all kinds of stuff.
Amazing. Yeah.
We have philosophy conversations, we have relationship conversations, we have, things that are going on in culture and conversations about topics that are hot. We do this a ton. And so I realized that I just really love talking and I love diving into things and learning about people and especially the human nature and the psyche. And I think if there was one thing that I would have done, one thing I would have done if I wasn't a race car driver, I maybe would have been some kind of a psychologist or counselor or something like that, because I really love listening to problems, but also solving them, which includes talking. So that's good for me.
Yeah.
A little bit of talking.
You talk about how, you like talking and you like drinking, so you have your vineyard and you like these things.
Can we just drink?
Yeah, so
Bring my wine to more of the shows.
Missed opportunity next time. You bring some wine. We'll do it up.
Note to self: add somnium to all conversations.
But one of the things that struck me when I was listening to the Gloria Steinem episode is she turns around, she asks you a question, and you say that you wouldn't have said that you loved racing and you loved things about it, but you wouldn't say that you loved racing, which I thought was fascinating because you did it for 27 years. I'm curious now, having done all these different things, writing the book, the way the fitness stuff that you post about and that you live by, and in the podcast, have you found what you love yet? Have you found the thing that you would say, I love that thing?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like on some level I'm not being completely, it's not painting a very good picture to say, like, I don't love racing. I did love racing. I wouldn't have done it for
context.
But then, no, that's what I said, but it's like important to elaborate on that and say that, I obviously loved racing. That's why I did it for 27 years. It's just that the part that I loved about it, I really realized that I could put into a different platform. And so I loved the joy. The joy was in the journey for me. It was in having hope and belief that the next race or the next year was going to be better. And then, of course, that little progress of, like, that setup change was better and that went better. So that always was really fun to me, that process. So once I felt like that wasn't going to be realistic moving forward, well, the part that I loved was gone. So I was able to move on from that, which is, I just am all about growing and expanding, and I didn't ever race just to be out there. Right. So I always loved that hope.
Do you?
I don't think I fully answered your question, though.
No, you kind of. Well,
what was the part about it?
Because I said, did you find a thing that you love, and then you elaborated on the thing that I pulled out of context, for which I apologize. But you elaborated there, and then you said yes.
Did I find?
You said yes. So technically, you answered it. You can't tell me you didn't.
No, I partly answered it, but I like to answer. You asked a question for a reason. So, what do I love? And I. First off, would say that the way that I've found what I really love is to spend time alone. I think that's super critical to realizing your hobbies and interests and the things that you enjoy doing. Because no matter who we're with, no matter if it's our family or if it's our partner or friends, I have found that we tend to still put on a little bit of an act, or we still are a persona of ourselves. But when you're alone, you don't have anything to prove, and you don't do anything that you don't want to do. Now, when you're at home, you might have to like wash dishes or laundry or something like that. But but most of the time, you can just choose whatever you want. So that's when you really find what you love. So, I found that I really love these deep conversations. I love talking. I love gardening. I love nature walks with my dogs. I love arts and crafts. I love travel and culture. But I'd say the fundamental that repeats every day is I love to learn.
Well, I mean, then you pick the perfect venue because you're constantly learning.
That's the thing is that when you do the interviews, I'm not really learning about myself right now. Like, I'm not really learning anything. I'm just telling you what I know. But when you're interviewing other people, you are learning. And while there's more preparation involved and it's a little more stressful and it's more work, there's so much more benefit too.
Have you found yet? I know you've done. Is the amount that you've done so far, is that a classified number? Can I say how many we've?
Well, I have recorded, including this week, I guess, 35 plus 8. I'm bad at math, especially on the spot. Especially on the spot. 43.
I think so. That sounds about right. That feels right. We're going to say
43 shows.
Confirm. The 40. Blank stares. We're all terrible at math. So you know what? You've done 43. And having
100.
done... Yeah, I've done 143. Having done as many as you have, has it been enough yet to see similarities amongst all the guests between the professors and the scientists and the authors and the athletes? Have you found a common through line yet?
A really common answer to finding what their biggest life lesson has been that really just don't take life so seriously. It's just nothing's that big of a deal.
One of my favorite mantras: none of this matters. Just enjoy the ride.
I mean, what is time and space and a clock anyway? And what is reality anyway?
What the hell are we even doing?
I mean, we don't have enough time for that. I think we have a little bit of time left, but not that much.
We'll make time. After all, time does not matter. So
what is time?
What is time? Pay no attention to that. Well, you got plenty of time. We can talk about whatever you want. But one of the things I was curious about, you said you're not learning. You're learning doing the interviews, right? You're learning so much. How much, if at all, has your process changed from that first episode to now you're doing 8 in a week?
Yeah. Not every week, but yeah, to do 8 in a week. But honestly, so what happened with my very first episode I recorded, which was with Tony Kanaan, who was my teammate in IndyCars back in the day. It was not meant to be him. He was going to be like the third episode, but I flew to Indianapolis, and it was kind of like a little test run, a little practice round with my sister, my dad, and Tony. And I was on the airplane and I got my research and I thought, do I really need research on Tony? I mean, he was my teammate. But anyway, so I just kind of flipped through it and I read and I made some little notes and I thought, oh, these will be good questions. And then I got there. And when I landed in Indianapolis, I got a message that said, hey, Tony's at your house. They got the date wrong with the show. So he's from Brazil, so his manager had the 4-5 and the 5-4 wrong. So he showed up to do the interview. And so I had to be ready. And thank God I read that information because I had some really, I knew more about him, number one. I mean, it's funny how you think you know your friends and you think you just know everything about them or anything you'd need to know. But then when you get research on someone, you're like, oh, wow. And so all these other ideas emerged from the research. And so luckily I was prepared and I had just basically flipped over his packet that I printed and stapled together. And I just had my notes jotted down. So all I did was transcribe some questions onto a note card. And that became my process that I still do today.
You write them down just before.
Well, my writing is how I remember. Yeah. So I fortunately know how I memorize things, and I learned that a while back. It was from having to do, gosh, what was it? It was in Washington, D.C. It was I was the keynote speaker. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a big thing. And I don't think anyone had done it since Dale Earnhardt Sr. or something. Wow. And I had to do it. Press Club? National Press Club?
That sounds like a
something like that, yeah. And I had to do a 30-minute speech. And I was like, Jigga, what? And so I just kept writing things down, and I realized that I didn't need the cards anymore once I got there because I wrote it down so many times. So fortunately, I know my process, but it's the same now.
That's amazing.
And then I don't usually need it. But I see you looking down a lot, so...
Have I looked down a lot?
Just kidding, I'm playing with you.
I can't tell you something. I was very aware of that.
There is a trick to when you drink the water, like on the table where my note card is.
Telling me anything I don't know.
Then you look down at your note and you're like, oh yeah, I want to get to that.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Well, it's funny.
Let me set this glass down really gently.
I'll pull the curtain back. There's stuff I really want to get to. I wanted to talk to you about the Howie Mandel thing. I want to talk to you about a bunch of stuff. But you said something that I was going to chase instead just now, which is that you have your friends and your family, and you think you really know them until you put them through this lens, and you interview them. And that's part of, as a guy who listens to a lot of podcasts, I say I commute a lot, some of my favorite episodes are when the hosts turn it around on their family members or on their friends, because you hear that discovery and you hear them. But what was funny to me was getting another look at that when you were talking to Gloria, and you were like, it was one of your toughest interviews, was talking to your dad. You're like, come on, give me something. But what did you learn from that experience in talking to your family, talking to your father? Was it...
that my dad is still blocking things out.
There's still a wall
that he's not
there.
going deep because the wall is still wide and high. Pink Floyd, The Wall. There it is. But it's also what made me me. So I can see myself in it. And but at the end of the day, I'm very open-minded.
Yeah.
And I that's a difference that my dad and I have. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying I'm more. And so I am able to have my mind changed or be convinced otherwise. It's not because someone told me. It's because I've rationalized it differently. So being vulnerable and open, talking is part of that process. So my dad, he's just kind of where he's at, but it's also there's some beauty in his simplicity and his lack of awareness for potential angles of how something could be done.
Totally.
He just really sees things a little more black and white. Yeah. Although he can't say he's totally relaxed and he's disconnected from the outcome in any way when he gets so mad. But whatever, Dad. Yeah.
Beauty and
I love my
simplicity.
dad. He's part of what made me me. But I would hope that he would want me to improve on the things that could be done better in my life, and they might be from him. And if I ever have kids someday, I'd want them to improve too, and
Totally.
Break cycles or improve on some of the things that were just comfort zones in the family, right? Like it's about expanding.
100%.
Yeah.
Beauty and simplicity, fantastic qualities to have.
Gloria
wonderful
had a
things.
lot of simplicity.
I was going to say that not so great when you're trying to kill at least an hour of airtime. When you're trying to make a thing.
I'm coming around to the concept that, because I've had a couple interviews where the answers are very short. Yeah. But there's power in the short answer.
For sure.
It just doesn't last very long. And then I'm like, getting another glass of water, another drink. I'm like, gosh, where are we going?
Through those cards. Did that.
But they just are shorter episodes, which is okay. You're still getting a lot of information. It's just more concise and blunt and simple. And that's okay, too.
There's a confidence in the response. They know their response, and that's exactly what they wanted to tell you.
Gloria's 85. She's not changed. She's it. That's the way it is.
That is it.
I really trust her because she's 85.
Yeah. There's wisdom that comes with that. Also, she's Gloria Steinem. I'm going to trust her no matter what she says. But yeah, another thing I really wanted to bring up, because I just saw you posted it, and I think it's really fun. You were in the trailer for Charlie's Angels. You're going to be in the movie.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool when you get asked to do those little things that kind of honor your profession or honor what you've done.
Precisely.
That was a big compliment. So I went, and luckily I kind of knew a lot of people on set, like
Really?
Patrick Stewart, and I'd met Elizabeth Banks before, and I hadn't met Naomi, who I was, I don't know if I'm giving it away, but there's other girls that have posted things that they've done, and so it's clearly in the field that they're known for. So you can imagine I'm probably driving. I actually had a stunt double. She was really nervous. Yeah, there was a stunt driver, not a double, a stunt driver, I guess,
Right.
whatever. But I rode with her and to do it, and I wouldn't want that job. They're asked to do things that are pushing the comfort zone and supposed to look really good, and they get like one try at it, and then they're like, okay, action, and it's like, I practice 100 laps before I actually qualify or anything. She's one try, and then I'm in the car, and so she was very sweet. But it's a cool opportunity to do those things and have fun.
You've popped up in a million things. Was that your first, maybe not first feature film cameo before?
I don't know. I don't think so, but
I'm not sure what. It's still
It's
cool.
like doing math on cue. I can't really remember
Been a
right
lot of
now.
stuff. Yeah, there's been.
I've
a
been
lot
very
of stuff.
fortunate. Really cool things I've done in my career.
A
So
million cool things. Well, I really appreciate you coming by and talking about this cool thing with me.
thank you. It's fun.
yeah,
The
it's super
podcasts are
fun.
really cool. I mean,
They're
it's just like we just keep doing this, but for another hour.
Yeah,
you
keep
know.
going.
And
If we
honest,
didn't have other guests, you and I would keep going. I'm telling you.
yeah.
Right
Well,
now.
these 15,000 people will be happy to
We've
dive deeper.
satiated their desire for a conversation for now.
Yeah, there's just it's just a unique platform because you get so much deeper into concepts and people.
Yeah.
And you realize that there's so much similarity between people even, just in stories and, everyone has struggles and everyone works on coming through that. And so the ultimate goal is like, how can the show help you grow by learning from these lessons that have been learned, but through the lens of great things achieved, and then of course there's that sprinkling of science and the educational side.
Well,
So.
yeah, I just love your curiosity. I love the questions that come from that.
I feel like the greatest thought I have to the curiosity thing, as far as like interviewing people, it was Lewis Howes, he's a really, really nice guy, and he was part of what helped me realize that podcast could be really fun, and like this could be something I could do, because I went and did his, and his he was being given recommendation of like how to think when it comes to doing interviews, and someone told him, you don't have to be interesting, because he's worried about being interesting. He's like, you don't have to be interesting, you just have to be interested. So it's like curiosity.
Yeah, I love it. Were you a podcast person before you had your own? Did you listen to a couple?
So I did, but I listened to it through YouTube a lot.
Okay.
So like I've listened to Joe Rogan stuff, and I've listened to all kinds of things where it's actually been a podcast, but then that's also why I do audio and video.
Yeah.
Because number one, if I'm getting these really giant guests, I also want to capture the visual. But then there's so many more platforms that you can put it across. So I love that. I love the way that you can narrow your search down on YouTube, and I think podcasts are actually going to improve on that too. Like how you can really find the shows that you want to listen to.
Well, there's so much content out there, and
oh my God, yeah.
I have do you have a podcast that you feel like you're the only person that listens to it? Like, I don't know if you do or not.
Probably. I mean, and then you'll talk to somebody that listens to a podcast, and you'll be like, I've never heard of it. They say it's amazing. You have to listen to it. So there's over 700,000 podcasts out there. So of course there's something for everyone, which is why I'm not trying to be everything. Yeah. If you don't want deep dive conversations on growth and expansion and stories along the way, and learning, then you know what, if you want to hear about a dating show, or
I have a podcast I listen to.
People love the crime ones, like the ones that are like series. People love that stuff.
I got one that's just
something
about
for everyone.
Amusement parks. It's just about Disney parks and Universal parks. They're three comedians, and they just talk about. It's called Podcast the Ride. It is insane, and they're these guys that have such a genuine love for like the lore behind all the different rides and all the different characters.
Do they do the show while riding?
No, they haven't done it. They haven't done one.
What's it
Actually,
called?
they might. It's called Podcast the Ride.
The Ride sounds true.
It's so much fun, and it's just a silly podcast. And I have that next to my like crime podcast, next to my deep dive podcast. There, you could just like make your own
and
thing.
then maybe it just depends on the day.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we have audience questions. That's the only reason I'm like wrapping this up, because I want to make sure we have time for that. But it really is. It's so awesome to have you here, and it's really a treat.
Thank you.
No worries. All right, we got at least three. Let's go. First one, microphone, all yours.
Hi, Danica. My name is Colin, and I want to know what inspires you to be a race car driver.
When I was a kid, I started racing when I was 10, and it really was because my sister wanted to do it. So we used to go to the dirt tracks on Sunday nights. My dad worked on a car, and he also used to race himself. And my sister wanted to start go-karting. There was somebody in our neighborhood that raced go-karts, and so we went and looked at them, and then thought, oh, this is a great way to spend time together as a family, because my dad worked a lot and my mom stayed home with us, so it was a way to do something so we'd get to know our dad. And eventually it took me away from home as I moved to England when I was 16, and backfired on him. But it was a way to spend time together as a family.
All right, thank you.
When you were moving away from home, they were super supportive of that. Obviously, they were all on board. Or what was that conversation
they let me go,
like?
but I'm pretty sure my mom cried every night.
Yeah, exactly. You were 16. You were moving home.
From what I heard.
Yeah. Was that hard on you, real quick?
No.
No, you were doing what you loved. You were 16.
No, I mean, I got to leave home at 16 and live in another country. A totally different time change.
Didn't occur to you at all.
No, it was fantastic. I'm like, see ya, with all my bags, going to England. And
Even in the moment, like when it was happening, the reality of it.
I
all the way
was
from
so
home.
excited. My mom was bawling, and I'm like, see ya, I'm so happy. I'm not happy.
How long
But
were you gone? It was the longest.
about 3 years.
She didn't go back for not even holidays?
Well, yeah, I would go back once or
Okay,
twice a year, but I mean, I was gone for 3
Gone for
years.
3 years. Fair enough.
16
Amazing.
to 19.
Great question. Let me get another one. Go for it.
Hi, Danica. How are you? Actually, my mentors had a really cool opportunity in sitting with you for a podcast. So, my question for you is, I feel like especially today with the whole social media wave, entrepreneurism is on an ultimate high, right? Everyone wants to be a motivational speaker. Everyone wants to share their story. And like you said, people have a lot of similarities. So what, I guess, distinguishes one person apart from another? What qualities do you look for when you want to sit with people?
You mean in who I'm interviewing, or what makes my show different because it's me?
No. What are the qualities you look for in your guests?
The most important thing is that and you don't know it for sure. You just kind of look at their story and think if they have had an interesting life arc that, that can provide some pretty interesting questions. But in the moment, of course, if they're vulnerable, if they're willing to share, and if they're a storyteller, that makes for a really great guest.
Yeah.
And someone that's self-reflective and is able to expand on things that have happened in their life and what they gained from it or what they learned or what they lost. That realization and that reflection is also beneficial as part of the story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your question. Who's your dream get? Who's the white whale?
Oprah. It's not a white whale, but Oprah.
You could get Oprah. I think you could get Oprah. You met Oprah, didn't you?
No, I haven't met Oprah. Actually, tracking way back to my first Indy 500, I was going to go on her show when she was still doing it in Chicago. And I remember I mean, this is so, I just had a dress in the closet and I picked that out. And, I'm sure I was just going to show up, like no makeup or hair by someone professional, which I didn't have it done by a professional either today. But I'm older now, so I know how to use the wand thing. It's a really nice little trick to learn, that wand versus the curling iron, the flat iron, I mean. So I was supposed to go on her show, and then that was during Hurricane Katrina. So everything got canceled, and she went down there, and so that was it. I've really wanted to go on Super Soul Sunday just because that's been a really pivotal point of growth as far as learning about new guests and these more spiritual speakers. So I would love to go on Super Soul Sunday, but that format has kind of changed and adjusted. But I would just love to sit in the woods with her and her. I think she does them at her houses, I feel like I've heard. And it's not about going to her house. It just looks so peaceful, and it's Oprah.
I just want to feel that energy. Get some
Yeah,
Oprah energy.
but I want to know how Oprah got to that point herself. Like, how did you tap into this more mind, body, spirituality? Like, where did that come from?
100%.
Yeah,
and then once you became aware of your perception in the world, did that impact your...
Right. How did your life change?
You
Because
reconcile
my
those
life is
things.
totally different now. I almost don't even remember what it was like before being more awake to so many new things.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Well, I look forward to the Oprah. Oprah watches this show. She knows you want this. So she's one of our
I think
biggest...
I just saw her, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. She was just walking by outside, and she was watching on mobile. But that's going to be an amazing episode when that happens, putting that out into the universe. That's going to come to fruition. Let's do one more question. Go for it, sir.
Okay. Hi. How are you? Question is the training regimen you share with readers on your book. Is it similar to the training regimen you did for racing?
Well, I did it while I was racing. So you're talking about my book, Pretty Intense. There's one of the 3 sections of the book is on the body, and so then I wrote a 12-week workout program, which I tested, and I did a trial group for. And I actually did it at the beginning of this year myself. Like the first few months of the year, I did every single workout and was only 1 day late in finishing, with traveling 45 out of 90 days. So it's like adaptable. And you've got to be a little committed, but it was totally doable. So is that? I mean, yes, I did that while racing. I did that and a little bit more. I would say that the program was not. I did a little bit more than the program because I included weights, so more weights. But the program is accessible if you're at home with nominal equipment. So. yeah, so I might not have done quite that many extra little cardio sessions like the program outlines, or maybe I didn't do so many HIIT sessions, but I did a similar amount, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, of course. Like, I mean, it's rooted in CrossFit. It has some interval running in it. It has some HIIT training, more circuit style training. But the workouts are 20, 25 minutes long, except for one of them every week. That one's meant to be 30 to 45. And there's 7 a week. So I encourage 2-a-days, which is, probably makes people go, yeah, that's not for me. But the program works. I mean, it really was what to make a short story long, I did IVF and I froze my eggs. And so I went through the hormonal treatments to do that. And so when I did that, I got done and I was like, they're like, oh yeah, everything will go back to normal and your stomach will go flat and you'll go back to normal. And you just have one cycle and you'll be right back there. And I was like, 2 cycles later, I'm like, all right, so apparently I just got fatter. So because that was my first insight into hormones and that they suck.
Yeah.
And they do some weird stuff to you. And so then I was like, wow. And in turn, more empathy for those who have gone through that kind of stuff before. So it was really rooted in what I did to lose those few pounds that I gained from that treatment. And it worked super quick. And so I was like, so there was interest in writing a fitness book, and I was like, or writing a book, and I was like, well, this is not going to be some kind of like a book about me. This is going to be a book about this program. Yeah. And I was excited about it, and I pretty much wrote the whole thing.
It's amazing.
I actually took my own food photos too. I wrote the 50 recipes. I took the photos myself. One of the photos in there for one of the recipes is like my 10th photo I took on my camera that I just bought one. I was like, a friend had one. I was like, what do you have? So I bought that, and then it was my 10th photo, working with the aperture on it to like focus and make other things blurry, and it's in the book. So apparently, I just had a knack for photographing my food. So, but I ate a lot of cold food in those days because you got to photograph it, and then I ate it. So there's a lot of cold food.
It's not. Have you always, thank you for your question, have you always been that way of just, I'll just figure it out, I'll just do it. Whatever it is, I'm just going to do it. I'll figure it out. Oh, you don't have a camera. All right, I'll get a camera and I'll figure it out.
Actually, that's my first thought, is I'll just do it myself. And then I go, oh, yeah, maybe not. So, yeah, I that's the first thing I think of. Like, that's, we were talking about this with a friend the other day about, it was something about like, oh, it was my mom with her dogs, and they were going on a trip, and so she asked my sister if she could watch them, and the dog had like a little surgical had surgery on some level. I don't know how serious it was, but then she was going to drop him off at my sister's like the next day, and she's like, well, does he need medicine, or like what needs to happen? And so then my mom calls back and goes, you know what, I realized that we can take him, it's actually not that big of a deal, and we're driving, and so my sister and I were laughing, we're going, like, the first thing I think is I'll do it myself, and then if I can't, I'll get help. Right. So the first thing I think is, well, I'll just take the pictures myself. I gotta make the food anyway. Right. I gotta test the recipe anyway.
It'll be right there.
I like my food to look good when I eat it, even if I'm by myself.
Who better than you?
So I'll take a picture. I'll buy a little extra equipment, buy some extra props with some different plates and silverware, and bada bing, bada boom.
That's it. Well, those pictures and all of those tips and that program and everything, that's in your book, Pretty Intense, which is available right now all over the place.
Yeah, and the first part, I know we're going along here, but
that's all right.
The first part of the book is on the mind-body. And so that was really like the baseline launch into the podcast, because that's my passion. That's my favorite part of the book, is creating mantras, like getting out in nature, like figuring out who you are, creating your woman cave, or man cave, but you guys usually have them. So, having your own space is essentially what it boils down to. So that part of the book is the first part, and that's where like my passion lies, for 100%. Sure. But I also love to cook and work out too, but
100%.
That's more based on like podcast direction.
Got it. And that's why the podcast bears the same name, Pretty Intense, which you can find where all podcasts are available. It's Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. Anywhere. If you listen to podcasts, you can find this one. And you should. It's a fantastic one. And obviously, there's a lot of great content on the way. You've been working super hard making that happen. Where can people get the wine?
Somnium wine. Yeah, yeah. You can buy it online. It's in a few places, few restaurants here and there. It's super boutique. We don't make very much of it, but it's done at the highest level from the beginning. In fact, my winemaker today was also helped me pick the property itself. So he was picking up a handful of soil and going, "Oh, there's probably obsidian in here," and he goes, "Oh, yep, there it is," and you're like, "What?"
No, I thought that too. I was going to say that the seemed high. And then
I saw that too, and I thought that too, because because of the elevation and the mountain.
Smell the obsidian. Yeah, that's what that is.
So he helped pick it. So it's been done at winemaker level from the beginning. So it's really good.
Awesome. We got the wine, the podcast, the book. Charlie Angel's coming out. Anything else? Anything else before we wrap it up? That's it.
I'm exhausted.
You got a lot of stuff. Yeah. Well, congratulations. Thank you for making us the cherry on top of that was your press week Sunday. It was very nice to have you here. Super excited to talk to you. Please, whatever the next 10 things are, come back and tell us all about them. Ladies and gentlemen, you were a great audience. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thanks for those watching. That is correct. Make a lot of noise because that's Danica Patrick. Let's keep going. Come on.